hepatitis A is really easy. Okay, we have, you don't have to even draw this one. You got IgM, you got IgG. The only one that matters is IgM. Ta-da, that's hepatitis A. We have doctors who will order a total hepatitis A. It doesn't tell them diddly squat. Really, the hepatitis IgM, hepatitis A IgM is the only one that's of significance. We'll get back to B. Hepatitis C, we actually measure the antigen on that one most of the time. And D, it only matters if you have B, and we don't measure E. All right. The biggest one is hepatitis B. Okay, because this one has multiple antigens and multiple antibodies. Which one do we see? What do we see first?
Antibody.
This one's not the antibody. We've got to add the antigens in there too. And
Antigen.
first thing we're going to see is the hepatitis B surface antigen. That's the first thing we're going to be able to detect, is the surface antigen. In here, during the most we'll find the hepatitis B E antigen, but we don't test for that one. Okay. Here's our hepatitis B E antibody. Alright. These both come in at the same time as we see our surface antigen. This merely indicates that our infectivity is higher. Okay. So the only time you're going to see this testing is in an exposure. So a doctor or a nurse or phlebotomist, whoever stuck themselves, that's when you'll see that E testing. So we've got our hepatitis B surface antigen. We'll see our hepatitis B, the core antigen starts over here. We don't worry about the core antigen, we just test for the core antibody. The core antibody. Okay. And then here, we get the hepatitis B surface antibody. Okay, so the ones we're really concerned with are the surface antigen, the core antibody, and the surface antibody. All right, this one equals immunity. The core antibody, and how to put this, means you got it. Means that you have or had hepatitis B. This one means you have it now. All right? The reason that comes up is we have a couple different states we talk about. The first is, okay, if you are currently infected, I'm going to see a positive hepatitis B surface antigen. So if I have an infection, I'm going to get rid of these guys just because it's a little confusing. Okay. If I have a current hepatitis B surface antigen, I have a current infection going on. Okay. What do we call this right here?
Zone of.
That's the core window. Okay. During this time, the surface antigen has gone away. Okay, we've gotten rid of enough of the virus that we can't measure the surface antigen anymore. But our surface antibody titer has not risen to a point we can record it. So this is the core window. After the core window, then once we develop the hepatitis B surface antibody, then we have what we consider immunity. So we're going to go through that's what's going to happen with somebody who gets the disease. Yes?
So the one in the core with the rest of the disease and the one, the HBC antibody, that's the vaccine?
No. We're going through that, I promise, okay? The surface antigen means you have currently got this. The core antibody means you have had it at some time. And that will show you why that's important in just a sec. The surface antibody means you're immune to it. So,
So that's an S, not a C.
this is a
And
C,
the last one.
and this is a S.
That's an S.
That's an S. Hepatitis B surface antibody. So let's take the case of someone who's been immunized. So I come in, I give you a shot. Which one's gonna be positive, or which ones are gonna be positive?
The initial shot, like right when once their body starts
It
winning.
doesn't matter, the initial shot or after all three.
Just the core antibody and the surface antibody?
No, it would start with the.
Just the surface antibody, it wouldn't start with the antigen when you use it. You don't have enough of this to measure. So if you are immunized, if you've been given a vaccine, so vaccinated, is the surface antibody only. That's the only one you're gonna detect. Yes.
Vaccinated for things you've already had. Like, if you've had hepatitis, can you get vaccinated?
Yes.
Or-
The only risk with certain diseases, and hepatitis isn't necessarily one of them, the only risk with certain diseases is that your immune system is going to have a really massive response. So you may have a little more unpleasantness with the shot than yeah. But yeah, you can get vaccinated against something you've already had. Okay. So vaccinated people only have the hepatitis B surface antibody. Now, let's go to your point. Let's say you already had hepatitis. You got hepatitis. Okay? Let's just get somebody, we're gonna work our way backwards here, who's immune due to the disease. All right? What am I gonna find in them?
Core and surface.
Right, we're going to see both the hepatitis B surface antibody and the hepatitis B core antibody. Okay. So if all you had was the vaccine, all you're going to have is the surface antibody, because all we gave you was just enough of the surface antigen to make your body respond. Okay? Okay. All right. The other state would be active infection. And in that one, depends on how far along the process you are. If it is just the surface antigen, that's early in the disease state, right? Because if the only thing we can find is the antigen, you haven't had time to make the antibodies yet. So you have a very current, recent infection. Okay.
So would this be like the 3 stages? Like the surface antigen would be the initial stage, the core antibody would be the latent stage.
Not necessarily latent, but late stage.
Okay.
It might be latent, but I hate to really hold that there. But hold that thought, because it's gonna come up in just a second, okay? So my core antibody, and then here is my surface antibody. So once I'm recovering, then my surface antibody will come up. All right, so if we have someone who has a current hepatitis B infection, we're gonna monitor the surface antigen and the surface antibody for that to come up. Okay. I know I'm scribbling all over the place. Early, we're gonna have the surface antigen, and then as it progresses, we'll get the antibodies. What's the other stage that we might have? What did I tell you happens in hepatitis B in, about 10% of the cases? They turn into a what? Turn into a carrier. Okay. And a person who is a carrier for hepatitis B, we're gonna see the surface antigen. They're gonna make the core antibody. We're never gonna see the surface antibody. So a person who is a carrier is gonna be, you're gonna have this surface antigen persisting, and the core antibody may show up, but we're never going to get to that immune stage where the surface antibody shows up. Hint, the question, not hint blatantly, I'm telling you, the question on the tests are going to say, if I have a patient who is vaccinated, which of these is going to be positive? If I have a patient who is currently infected, what is going to be positive? Okay, yes.
Is one of the things that you erased a core antigen?
No, that was,
What is that?
well, there's a core antigen, we don't ever measure the core antigen, we just measure the core. Yes, obviously, if we were to look for it, we'd find it,
Yeah.
but it's not clinically significant. The thing that we had was the hepatitis E antigen and E antibody. And that just means that that's when you're at your most virulent. That's when it's the most contagious. And like I said, the only thing we use that for is simply someone who has been exposed. If that E antigen is positive, we're going to be much more aggressive in prophylactic therapy than in somebody whose E antigen is not positive, just because of the levels. Yes.
I'm sorry, can you say which one it is the carrier has again, or does
The
not have-
carrier has the surface antigen and the core antibody,
But not the
but
core
not the
antigen.
surface antibody.
What is the E secretions, or the E doesn't stand for anything?
I think it stands for envelope, if I remember correctly, but I'm not 100% certain, so
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's envelope, surface envelope and core. Does this help any to kind of go through each one of them? This is hepatitis is one of the most confusing, because when we run a hepatitis panel, all right, if I've got somebody in and I want to see what their hepatitis status is, what am I going to run? What kind of panel what panel do you think I'm going to come up with? Not going to do a total anything. Totals are not really significant. They don't tell us much. I'm going to do a hepatitis B. Which one? Ones.
The surface and the core?
When I do a full diagnostic panel, I'm going to do a surface antigen, a core antibody, and a surface antibody. I'm also going to do a hepatitis A IgM, and I'm going to do a hepatitis C. And I think that one is a total, because I think that's the only one we have. Does that make sense? Yes.
The core window, is it between the surface antigen and the surface antibody, or is it the entire core?
It's just the time, the core window is defined as the period of time when the surface antigen is no longer detectable, but the surface antibody has not yet reached detectable limits. So in other words, it doesn't mean that the antigen's not there, the antibody's not there, it's just they're not detectable. So this core window, and it can vary from person to person how long that core window is. In a carrier, that core window is forever. And I don't know what causes someone to be a carrier. Nobody really does.
I don't have an inventor. The first time that you, on the panel, is also gonna hepatitis B, C, the core antigen, they said no.
No, we don't do this, it's just the core antibody. Like I said, we can test the core antigen, but truthfully, that's not gonna give us a lot of information. So when we're pulling for a panel, we want something that's gonna tell us what the hepatitis status is without costing any more than it absolutely has to. I mean, we could measure the surface antigen, and if it's negative, then we could measure the, but okay, realistically, that's silly, we're just gonna throw it all on at one time.
Put the core antigen here inside
The
of that.
core, yeah, the core antigen is going to come up somewhere in here and go down somewhere in here. And then obviously hepatitis E is gonna be the same as A.
I missed writing it down. Was it IgM first and then IgG?
IgM first,
Okay.
and then IgG. But in hepatitis A, it's kind of like mycoplasma. It's like a lot of our disease states. All we're really interested in is, do you have it now?
Mm-hmm.
Are you in a current infection? And that's going to be our IgM. And one of the most commonly misordered things that we will get orders for an IgG and an IgM. They don't really want an IgG level and an IgM level. What they really want is a something IgG, something IgM. So like the doctor would write an order, the doctor's order would be, and what we would get is so if you just get the G and the M alone, we always call and say, was there another word attached to that? Because most of the time, now, if the doctor orders a G, an A, and an M, then he's looking for immunoglobulin levels.
The Hep A and E,
Mm-hmm.
the IgM, is that actually the antigen?
The Hep E, we measure the Hep E antibody or the Hep E antigen? It's the antibody. We look for the we look for the antibody. Okay, is that helpful? And yes,
Is E going to be doing the same thing as A? Or is E going to
they're all, okay, if you really want this to get confusing, we can put all the IgGs and all the IgMs in there. Okay, you're going to have a hepatitis B IgM antibody in there. At some point, you're going to have a hepatitis core antibody IgM, and then you're going to have the IgG. Believe me, this gets to be god awful. So we're going to take it down to the significant pieces, and the significant pieces are the surface antigen, the core antibody, total or IgG, and the surface antibody IgG.
And this is what you're going to test this one.
That's from a test tube. Okay. Any other questions you guys have while you've been studying so hard last night
Oh yeah.
for tomorrow's test? Yeah, I know, I'm not an idiot. I was watching television last night too, instead of doing my homework.
You gotta have that one day brain day.
Well, you know, the cat needed petting, so, you know, that's what started it. She was laying on my keyboard, so I decided, well, maybe I'll just pet the cat and watch TV for a little bit, and the next thing I know, it's 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm going to bed, so.
Yeah, I had 3 cats in my life. I didn't want to disturb them. They didn't go.
Yeah, I know, and that little bird, little fuzzy bird, you just don't want to disturb them. Yes, I know, the crazy cat right here. Okay, and so do you have any other questions about tomorrow's test? Stuff that we're gonna have on tomorrow's. Like I said, seriously put some heavy duty time into causative agent and disease state. That's that's a page all by itself. Okay, I'm trying to add, I know you guys are tired, I know you're brain dead, I know you've been at this is a long semester, and then to hit you with all of this at the end is a lot. So I'm trying to break it down a little bit into what's the really significant pieces that you're gonna need. So for this particular thing, the 4 things I told you is gonna be the bulk. Make sure you know this. There's probably gonna be 10 to 20 questions on everything else, but there's a lot of questions on the disease state, the stages. Like I said, make sure you really know the stages of syphilis. Okay, what are the stages of syphilis? Let's just go through that.
Something latent and later.
Okay, well, he got 1. How about somebody else try and get the other ones?
Tertiary.
Primary, secondary, latent, and tertiary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're not named real complicated, primary, secondary, tertiary.
Did you end up with as many matching as you had expected?
Oh, yeah, there's a gazillion matching. RNA and DNA virus,
Spirochete diseases.
tons of them, RNA and DNA viruses. You have to know which viruses are RNA, which ones are DNA. That's 10 points right there. The disease state and the causative agent, that's probably 20, 25 points. I didn't count, but it's a lot. Okay, so you wanna make sure you got those down. Those are pretty straightforward.
So since you have method left to teach us, can we just use this as a study hall? Cause I'll stick around.
No, well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into lab. I wanna do a little bit of stuff over there today. I do have a bacterial antigen kit. No, we cannot go home at 9 o'clock. I do have a bacterial antigen kit that I wanna do. I wanna give you the option to do any tests that you haven't done. I want all of you to work together, help each other. The standards, I want you to do all of the calibrations, or all of the spec standards, because Barb said you guys had some of you had some problems with that on the test, and that is on your final practical. Okay, so, and then I do want to get the lab set up today for our practical practice tomorrow. This afternoon or after lunch, yeah, we are going to have an after lunch probably, but when we review for the test, okay, I want to review for the final a little bit today instead of all tomorrow. We'll do a little bit today, a little bit tomorrow. But in today's review, we're going to pair up into teams. We're going to have a competition, and there's going to be a prize. I'm going to give you mulligans. The winning team will get 5 mulligans. Well, let's see, I'll determine how many when I split you up into teams, we'll see. But once the winning team will get more mulligans, the second and third team will get less. And who knows what a mulligan is?
It's like, I don't know, it's like a trivia thing, like.
It's an I don't know.
free.
It's a free pass. Now, you have to choose which questions to put it on. So if you put it on a question and you got that question right, you've wasted a mulligan. But if you really don't know, you can put that sticker on the question, and I will give you the points for it. It means it'll take me a little longer to grade your test tomorrow, but that's okay. But I will give mulligans as a prize for the team that gets the most right
For
answers.
the test tomorrow?
For the test tomorrow, not for the final, for the test tomorrow. And you can only use them on the multiple choice, not the matching, because it'd be way too confusing for me to figure out which matching question they were on. And you have to choose which question it's gonna go on. But I have stickers at home, I'm sure I can find some stickers. Halloween stickers. But that's gonna be the prize for today's study session. Do you wanna do trivia on paper? Do you wanna do it on paper, or do you wanna do it verbally? Okay,
Yes.
all right, verbally. That, I don't care, doesn't matter to me.
We can write it down too, right?
Of course, it's review.
Oh,
Yeah, we're gonna start with the early stuff that we talked about today, so it'll be complement, basic immune system, we wanted diseases, which we just had a test on. What's that?
The difference between an antibody and
The
an
difference
antigen.
between, if you don't know the difference between an antibody and an antigen, you might as well just leave right now, because that's. Because that's the whole basis of this. Okay. Any questions for tomorrow? All right, tomorrow I do have a game plan. We're gonna come in, we're gonna take the test. Then we're gonna move over to the lab and we're gonna do our practice practical. Then I'm going to do affective evaluations. We'll go to lunch and then we will do some more review for the final after lunch tomorrow. So tomorrow will be a full day. Yes.
Jean's supposed to be doing affectives today.
Jean's gonna do her affectives today as we're working in lab. What I wanna do in lab today, I wanna make sure we do RPRs, because we've only done those once. We're going to have 2 rotators set up, just like we're gonna have in the final, the practical, the final practical. After tomorrow, at the end of the day, you all have to let me know, or actually not at the end of the day, after we're done with the practice practical, we have to decide the most effective way to set up the lab. Okay? The plan right now is to put a scope at the front table, and then at the back, one that doesn't have anybody sitting at it, those will have the diffs on them. You'll have your scopes at your spot to do the urine micro. The Clinitest is gonna be set up. We're gonna set up one MLA tomorrow and see how that works. If it's not sufficient, we'll set up a second one on Tuesday. Tomorrow, you're just gonna use, or on Thursday, tomorrow you're just gonna use whatever bloods we have. They are collecting specimens for me tomorrow at work, and I'm gonna go pick those up. So tomorrow's specimens are probably gonna be mostly normal, because it's just gonna be you guys. Thursday's specimens are not necessarily going to be normal. So they could be anything. I've had students in the past, in fact, I think one of you guys came to me the first practical we had in heme. This isn't normal. Yeah. It's because the patient was sick. So we have sick patients at the hospital sometimes. What? Yeah.
Don't go to a hospital if you're sick.
Oh no, you just go for your STD check. That's Friday nights. Fridays and Sundays. Getting ready for the weekend and getting done. All right, no more questions on tomorrow's test material.
Are we gonna do
Are we drawing anything?
No, you're done drawing.
Okay.
You don't have to draw any more. All done drawing. Well, till you get to clinicals. But, because Jean said all of you got all 4 test tubes.
Oh, I meant like drawing my pictures.
Oh, drawing pictures? No, I don't think we're gonna have any pictures on this one. Although you all did lovely on the last one, I enjoyed your artwork immensely. I don't think we're gonna have, I think there's 2 essays. Okay. There's 2 essays, and one is describe the stages of syphilis. Oh, we never did that, did we? We named them. What's the primary stage? Very good. He's finally waking up for us. Okay. All right, what is the primary stage? Describe it to me.
It's a chance
Canker. Okay. That's the key piece for the primary stage. That's where we're going to see canker. That is a lesion or a sore. We're most commonly going to see it in the genital region. That lasts a week or so. Then we go into secondary. What's secondary? Yes.
It says 1 to 6 weeks.
1 to 6 weeks. Okay. It can go longer.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the time, it's just a couple weeks. If it's treated, it goes away pretty quick. All right, secondary. Somebody. What's the secondary stage? Tell me some key characteristics of the secondary stage.
Fatigue, weakness,
Well, that's the flu-like symptoms, yeah. So
rash.
the rash on the palm of the hands and the soles of the feet.
The central nervous system can be affected.
You can see central nervous involvement in the secondary stage.
What's tinnitus?
What?
Tinnitus?
Tinnitus, ringing in the ears. Okay, then Chris's favorite stage. What comes next, Chris?
late.
Latent, and what is the latent stage?
Been happening around about a year, and then can cross the fingertips.
It can cross the placenta. Right, so the only thing that's infectious during the latent stage is congenital, so you only can pass it on to a baby at that point. But what is happening as far as the disease? What symptoms and stuff do you have during the latent stage? It's asymptomatic. We don't have any symptoms going on. Right? Then what's tertiary? What do I see in tertiary? That's where we see the guma. What else do we see?
Sterilization.
It might, I don't know for sure.
Aortic cardiovascular.
We're gonna see systemic. It's going to start affecting major organ groups. And that is when we almost always see some sort of spinal fluid involvement, some sort of central nervous system. It can occur in secondary, but by tertiary, it's almost always involving the central nervous system. Leads to tremors, seizures, dementia. So make sure that you know those four stages very well.
At what stage is it when you see like all the pictures on Google where they have mass lesions?
That can be stage 1. The cankers can get quite nasty.
Because I feel like when I Google it, it's like crazy.
And the babies like have half a face, like it's
The-
not like a sword.
Yeah, the baby, when it's congenital syphilis is awful because the bacteria eats part of the baby. It's necrotizing. It actually eats away the baby's flesh as it's developing. So yeah, you're right. It can come up with half a face or the flesh on its arms missing or
Yeah, don't Google it.
yeah, it's awful. It is very awful.
Teres dorsalis, are we going to need to know that?
So we've talked about the essay question, so now you should all get it right, because I told you what it is, so, and we've discussed, and everything we talked about in class, I wanna see in that essay question. You need to tell me what the symptoms are, you need to tell me what the name of the stage is. The latent stage, I need to know that it's, only contagious congenitally at that point. Those are things I'm gonna be looking for in that essay question. I cannot make it any more pointed than I have. Like I said, much matching on this one. But that does not mean a one-to-one matching. So like RNA, DNA, viruses, there may be 12 viruses and it's only gonna have A and B. So, okay. Questions? Yes.
So for tertiary, you said the gammas and the systematic and what else? It's systematic?
It gets systemic, yes.
Systemic.
You see systemic system, that's where it gets into the lungs, it attacks the aorta, gets into the central nervous system. And that's where you're gonna see the guma. How do we treat syphilis? Which one? Penicillin. And it's, you know, in this country, it's pretty no big deal. Millions of people still die every year from it. It is particularly nasty because there's a lot of places that don't have access. And if it gets into the population, you know, it does tend to run rampant. So the other matching is the route of transmission for all of these diseases. Such as which hepatitis which hepatitises are transmitted via the fecal oral route? A and E. Okay. How is mono transmitted? Through droplets, through oral secretions. Okay. Which ones are particularly bad when they're passed congenitally? Syphilis, CMV, those are the two big ones. How is hepatitis passed? the other hepatitis, B and C, blood and body fluids, or sexual contact. How about syphilis? It's usually sexual contact. It can be passed if you get a blood transfusion. UVCMV, varicella zoster.
That
Just-
must be what happened to the lady's husband.
What's that? I'm sorry, say that
I
again?
said that must be what happened to the lady's husband in the war, a blood transfusion.
Yeah, sure, that's what happened. Yeah, he was celebrating the liberation of Paris. I'm sure it was the blood transfusion, yeah. Okay. All right, anything else? Be home tonight? Feel free to text.